The coffee is poured. Time is standing still for just a moment. So let's have a simple conversation about what really happens in the military. Hi, welcome to Military Elimination. I'm your host, Gary. And the coffee's poured. The coffee's poured. Time is standing still. So let's chat about the military and what it does not want you to know. Why is integrity not in the military's vocabulary? That's the question of the day. Why is integrity not in the military's vocabulary? And we hear it in the vocabulary, we hear it in their advertisement, but it's not in their vocabulary. By being in the vocabulary, what we're talking about is based what is that they do on a daily basis. The infrastructure weaved throughout the military, part of who they are. Why isn't? When you wash away, I just want to imagine this: when you just take away the gifts, the bonuses, the incentives, and the benefits, what you have is a killing machine. The muscles for forcing compliance with other nations and United States policies. What you have is the United States military. So how can United States military, be the number one military in the world? How could it if they allow members to question the actions of their officers, the actions of the institutions? How can it be so strong if members are allowed to challenge decisions in court, where they can defy the orders of the officers over them, the president's orders, the Pentagon orders? Okay, and it was a rhetorical question, but in essence, they can't. We can't have a strong military and allow these things to happen. In order to have a strong military, there's things that they have to do that at some time can be underhanded, can be improperly, can be divisive, hurtful, challenge. It's all part of the program. Integrity isn't a factor. It's used as a slogan. It's used as a means to incite patriotism, desire to enlist in the military service. But when you look deeper at it, it's not part of what the military is about. Lack of integrity is lack of truthfulness. When we come into this, when we come in, we start looking at the military and their ethics, the level of integrity. You have to bring in JAG, the Judge Advocate General. You have to bring it into the conversation, because it's the biggest institution in the military that directly impacts the freedoms of the people that are in the military. It's punishment. It's a punishment machine, right? To do what they do, which is to support the commands, support the officers, their level of integrity, that threshold is real low. And that's the first thing you would need to understand, that it doesn't happen. People are going to say, Gary, you're just full of it. You're just a disgruntled person. You got an axe to grind. I got an axe to grind. When I've been part of this system directly as a soldier, and also through the research for over 30 years, and to see people who come into the military with good intentions are railroaded, who are lost of their freedoms, who are subjected to the atrocities, if I can use that word, that is part of who the military is, I'm going to say something. So I do have a bone to pick, because I've seen both sides. Unlike a lot of people who come to the military, I've unfortunately, I don't know if it's good or bad, got a firsthand look at the behind the scenes. Okay, that's talking to different departments, letters, correspondence, research. So let's talk about what is the purpose of JAG. Some will say JAG is service to the troops. It's a benefit of service. But I say JAG is simply the entity that keeps the service members in line while providing the officers an avenue of punishment, of punishing those service members, right? There's no way that you can do what you got to do if you don't have an iron fist over the people that are serving. It doesn't happen. It's a necessity. It must be that way. The only difference is that you have a choice. It's not conscription. It's not drafting. There's no requirements for you to serve in the military. There's nothing requiring a person to give up their freedoms for the military. That is the issue. That is the problem. But once you do agree to take the government's money and to serve in the killing machine, then you are subjected to their requirements and their laws. You lose out of your identity, your choice of freedom. You lose it. You lose it, and what is the price? A paycheck. That's the price. So whatever you're getting paid when you go in, whether it's $2,000, you just sold your freedom for $2,000 a month. That's before taxes, by the way. Okay? And which, by the way, in most cases, if you're trying to raise a family, it's the saddest thing for young people with kids to go into the military. They suffer. The money looks good initially, but when you start to think about it, it's not enough. That's why a lot of people in the military are on, they do the EBD cards. They get assistance. I'm a Navy brat. I grew up in the military. I was subjected to that. We got food boxes on the holidays. So on the surface, it looks like a good thing. Free medical, free dental. You get a guaranteed paycheck. You get all those goodies. But the essence is not enough. And it can be taken from you through JAG. What do you do when something happens and you get subjected to, or a person gets subjected to an Article 15 and their pay is reduced, right, for a period of time, or they get kicked out? And as I mentioned before in my last episode, you don't even have to do the right thing. You don't even have to do the wrong thing to be put in legal play. That's what the purpose of the JAG is. It's nothing more than a disciplinary arm of the military. It's a necessary evil, right? But it's only impacted if you enlist in the military. So let's consider this. Integrity. When we're talking about integrity, vocabulary, and what's happening, here's what you want to consider this. A sexual assault victim who faces persecution for speaking up. In most cases, sexual assault is perpetrated by someone in that person's chain of command. Okay? The records are shown between 18 and 24 years old are at high risk for that. They speak up, and then what happens next is they're retaliated against. Okay? That retaliation can open up the gates for non-judicial punishment for whatever reason, even if something is happening with them because of the assault by their commanding officer, and then they're having to deal with it with PTSD, which affects their performance, affects maybe their tendencies to go ahead and consume more alcohol or substance abuse, which leads to other things, which opens the door for punishment. Do you see that cycle? Didn't do anything wrong, but somehow they get the entrapment. 40%, I think that was just in the Army, 40% women were sexually abused. I should say sexual assaults, and that's men and women. I will link the references below in my transcripts. I just said a soldier who's subjected to an Article 15 for standing up for the truth. My friend stood up for the truth, refused to lie under oath. Her commanding officer, Gregory Dockery, the commanding officer of the battalion, Brett D. Dockery, brought him up on charges. Faked put him under court martial, which later went down to an Article 15. They did nothing. Where's the integrity in that? Where's the integrity of Gregory Goodell, who was the detailed military counsel, who refused to represent the person? Or even Robin Davis, who refused to dismiss the case because the Article 31 rights were violated? Or Robin Davis going down to Pierce County Superior Court when the National Guard violated the rights of the soldier to be brought in the 90-day trial rule. They went past that. Yes, it's a technicality, but it's a technicality that if they were in the civilian sector, would have gotten the case thrown out in most cases. Where's the integrity in that? Where's integrity when some soldiers were killed in a barracks fire in 1953? And you know what I'm talking about, Ferris, Rudolph Ferris, and several of his other members of the soldiers. So then what happens is that the families of these soldiers that were killed in this barracks fire went after the military looking for compensation, and they were denied. Okay, they were denied, even though the military admitted they're wrong and that there were negligence. Whereas if this happened in civilian sector, they would have been compensated, and the military decided no. So where's the integrity in that? The soldiers who were subjected to medical malpractice but was denied support on what things that would have happened in civilian as medical malpractice occurred within the military, and instead of making things right, the military decided against it. Not only they decided against helping them or providing support, they actually that created the foundation for what would have been called the Ferris Doctrine. It's Ferris and two other cases. Sometimes the soldier is given a bad evaluation report, which negatively impacts their ability to serve beyond down the way. That could be used as a means to get rid of a person if they got a bad evaluation, right? Personal evaluation, EER, then that later on can come back and be a reason why they're not allowed to retire. That happened to me. I only been in for 8 years, but I've never had a negative report, but just never had. Every school I went to, I was top 5 in the class. Evaluations from as far as my job performance, being able to, they call them the SQT scores at that time, based on my skill level was always high. I never got anything below a 95 on my skills testing. But I did have this one officer, little first lieutenant, I think, or second lieutenant, just right out of college. He gave me a negative report. It wasn't true. Even though I went to the Sergeant Major Battalion, he said, yes, I know it's not right. I know it's not true. But he said, there's nothing I can do about it. Now, it's no big deal because where's integrity in that? How can a person, it happens, we know it happens in civilian life, but at least in civilian life, there's retribution that you can do. There's things that you can do to make it better. Not in the military. That's your career. It didn't matter to me because at this point in time, I was in Fort Lewis. I got here, when did I get here? I don't know. I got here, but I had about 6 months left. So I got here September, October, November, December, January. I had 8 months left to do before I ETS'd. And it was no big deal. And this happened probably 3 or 4 months before that. It didn't matter because I was getting out anyways. And I'm glad I made a decision to get out because this kind of thing would have derailed a career that was very good. All because one person had a bone to pick with me. Straight up. Or they want to make a name for themselves. Straight up. Sometimes they just want to make a name for themselves. They can show what a hard ass they can be. Ooh, I could just cuss. Anyways, there you go. My friend told me I should cuss more. But anyways, so those are the kind of things I'm talking about. Where's the integrity in that? Where's the integrity in what the National Guard did to this one soldier? Where's integrity in what our government decided against Ferris and his family? Where's integrity? Where is it? There isn't. Therefore, it's not in the vocabulary. It's not what the military does. And why is that important? Because if you're dealing with someone with no integrity, all bets are off. You are serving at their whim, under their control, and there's nothing you can do about it. Let that sink in let that sink in. Just let that sink in. So why is integrity not in the military's vocabulary? Because it's a killing machine, and it has a purpose and a job to do. Right? We police up the messes of other countries. We create political lines for the purpose of resources. I know I'm getting a little bit political, but I apologize. It's never about democracy, right? Our country's coming more and more to socialism even as I speak. That's what it's about. And we need a powerful military. We need it. It's important. The world needs a powerful military, even though most of our debt is held by other countries. But anyways, I'm not going to go there. So why is it not in there? So the question, because we need them. So therefore, whether you're thinking about enlisting in the military, think about that. That they're not going to be truthful. That you go into an organization, an institution that's known for their lies. I'm sorry, is known for their lies, lack of integrity, lack of ethics, right? And they're asking you to serve within this environment. Sometimes people will sell out their souls to an environment like this, and eventually they become part of it. So that's why. And I do believe that a lot of, I'm sorry, hold on a second. I do believe that a lot of military people join the military, and a lot of military people join, and even like Brett D. Dockery, maybe they had good intentions when they went in, but the system corrupts them. The power corrupts. And then you get people who will do unethical things, lack of integrity. Even congressional, our leaders can't do anything about it, nor will they do anything about it. So when you think about that, why is integrity not in the military vocabulary? Because it's just not. So you think about that when you think about going in. If you ask yourself this question, could I be part of an organization where my well-being is an afterthought, where I may be subjected to unethical practices, where I could be retaliated against, subjected to sexual abuse, sexual assaults by people in my command? And if I can say this, what I might be possibly, but it's worth it to me, the penance, the money that they receive, the freebies and the benefits, I'm willing to roll the dice and take a chance. So I'm enlisting. Knowing all that, and a person still enlists in the military, or if they're in, they re-enlist, that's okay. That's on them. But I would caution them that when it happens, and a negative situation happens to them, it's going to come in a package that you won't make the connection right away because you'll be too busy fighting the situation that you won't be able to win. But you don't know that because you believe there's hope. You believe in the system, but the system doesn't believe in you. It's working against you. But you think they are. That blinds you to the fact that you're in a hopeless situation. And I know there's a lot of people who have grandpas and grandmas and uncles and aunts who served in there. God bless America. They're veterans. They retire and they'll talk all the good things about it. What I say to those people, when I say you don't know those kind of folks, I say they survived. They were blessed not to be subjected to it. What we don't hear about is the people, the grandpas and grandmas, aunts and uncles and sons and daughters who were subjected to the negative side of the military and who choose not to speak up, who can't speak up, who's traumatized by it. See, that's the flip side. In both instances, the memories still last. And I guess the best way to put it is you can live a life in hell or you can live a life in heaven. Okay? You can live a life in hell, you can live a life in heaven. And it comes down to your decision in the moment. I'm not going to get religious on anyone. Those who can understand where I'm coming from will appreciate it. Those who can't, hopefully someday it will be revealed to you. Going to the military is a decision that you would have to make and be willing to take the consequences. And the consequences, when they do happen against you, is something that you will live with for the rest of your life. Anyways, I guess my coffee is cold a little bit. It's warm, but it's not too bad. Coffee's there. I know I said this is just a simple conversation. I try to keep it simple. Things I say will be something I would say to you face to face if we were sitting in a coffee shop and you would ask me, Gary, what about this? What do you know about that? The same thing I'm saying to you now is I would say to you face to face, right? I served. I went in with good intentions. I went in to just serve I went in for the college benefits. That's a different story. But I was proud to do what I did. There was nothing more that I wanted was to go in the military and have an ID like my dad's, right? I was proud to. But things did happen while I was in that was interesting, but I thought I was isolated. But this thing with my friend in National Guard and this 20 years, 30 years of research and still dealing with it, I realize now that it wasn't a coincidence. It was the lack of integrity that's within the military system. So what do I tell you if you're thinking about it? Get all your facts. Ask yourself the hard questions. But if there's any doubt, then I would say walk away. Just walk away. And if you're in the military or someone is, do your due diligence again, right? And don't go by a lot of things that are posted on the internet that's based on the positive side of the military, right? So just don't. Find the dirt, dig deeper. And a lot of these, and here's one more thing. A lot of times people go in the military and they get issues with their commander, and then eventually JAG is brought in, and they start Googling all this stuff. And they start Googling all this stuff. And what you get is advertising for legal services. They're going to say, this is the rules. Yes, this is what it's supposed to do. Yes, you have rights. They're going to do all that. They're going to say, hey, they're going to say, click the button down, and we're going to listen to your case for free. All right? Then there you go. That's what they want. They want to prey upon your misery. And they're right. Because in actuality, everything they say is true. You do have rights. You do have law. You do have regulations. You do have it, right? But what they don't tell you is this. The fairest doctrine trumps it all, and they don't have to provide it in the way that you think they would provide it. They usually provide it in a way that's lack of integrity, a lack of compassion, ethicals. So you're supposed to, but you're not actually getting it. And that's the hard part. I think that's the hardest thing for people to wrap their head around. Anyways, I thank you for hanging out with me, listening to me ramble on. I did this with just no script, mainly because what's in your heart is in your heart. But share what I say with those around you. Do your due diligence. Click on whatever they have you doing so that whenever I post something, you can listen and you'll hear. I've been talking about up to this point here a lot with JAG, but I'm kind of transitioning now out of JAG because I think I talked enough about it, and these are my last two podcasts about it. We're moving on to other things, but really you got to understand is that understanding how JAG works is the key to whether or not you want to join the military. It's the discipline arm of the military. They're able to operate without following the rules. And in the end, you're the one that's going to lose. Thank you and have a good day. Until next time, keep the coffee pot hot and your thirst for information always on.